Broadband Board, Christine Halquist.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, all the CUD folks can come up and join us.
Then you'll be in the camera.
Right.
Yes.
You're the ones that have done the important work, of course.
Don't show there's
And I'm,
a big crowd here.
again, I'm Christine Halquist. I'm the Executive Director for the Vermont Community Broadband Board. And I'm very honored that the governor, about a year ago, asked me to do this job. And I think it's some of the most important work we've done since the electrification of rural America. Forgive my bias. But anyway, I'm here to proudly announce the awards that we've given so far since the formation back in August of this board. And we have over 400 volunteers working across the state to make this happen. So I find, you know, when I was CEO of Vermont Electric Co-op, I would look back at these photographs of when America was being electrified and think, wouldn't it have been nice to have been around during that time and be part of that? Well, guess what? We're doing that today. So today, I will tell you that we've issued, since August of last year, $96 million total in terms of grants. And if we look at those grants, $22.3 million has been issued for design and pre-building of the network. There's been $9.2 million issued, $9.2 million that's been issued in order to pre-purchase materials. And we pre-purchase materials, those critical lead time materials that have up to a year's lead time. And we also saved $2 million by making that statewide purchase. We also have now committed $64.2 million towards the building of this network. We're looking at building over 1,400 miles of fiber with this funding this year. And today we're going to announce the close to $48 million that's being issued by the great work of folks back here, CVFiber, Maple Broadband, and Northeast Kingdom, NEK Broadband. So I'm going to turn it over to the governor, but before I go there, I want to make a point. You know, being the former director of the NEK Broadband and the former CEO of Vermont Electric Co-op that served the Northeast Kingdom, Vermont, you know, you look at this broadband and how important it is for rural Americans that are struggling. You know, if we look at the data today, we see many of the people that are not connected, a high percentage, are low income. And, you know, wearing my old hat, I do want to make a plug for the fact that, you know, once we get a smart grid network built, a smart grid network depends on reliable connections to every home and business. But in 2020, the Americans for a Clean Energy Grid commissioned a study, and it shows that when we get to that point, you know, not only will we have this teleeducation, all these telemedicine, all these other connections that are so important, we'll also have an opportunity to save up to 30% on electric bills. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the governor, and thank you for your leadership on all this.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with Director Halquist, representatives from our congressional delegation, legislators, many legislators here. It's great to see you, and representatives from our CUDs to announce another round of these important investments. Others will go into more details on the projects these grants will support in a few minutes. But today we're announcing, as was said, almost $50 million in grants, which is just a portion of the $250 million appropriated to date. Over the years, we've talked a lot about the importance of broadband because we know in a 21st century economy and culture, people need to be connected. This is an issue that previous administrations and legislatures have tried to tackle, but the money needed to do so was a barrier. For years, I've said we needed an REA approach, which Christine had mentioned, to broadband, with Congress leading the way. I mean, this was something that we couldn't do on our own. So we're fortunate that the billions in federal aid will help make these significant investments, which is why, once again, I'd like to thank our congressional delegation for their work to get Vermont an unprecedented amount of money through the American Rescue Plan, IIJA, and more. Credit also goes to the legislature for being a willing partner on this issue. Working together, we've committed nearly all of what I propose for these historic federal funds. I also want to thank Director Halquist, members of the Broadband Board, and the CUDs who have hit the ground running with forward-looking ideas like pre-purchasing fiber, building districts that represent over 208 of our 251 or 252 towns. I think it's 253 now with Essex. Vermont is leading most other states in broadband development. Now, we know we have many challenges in Vermont. One of them being our aging demographics, which leads to a reduction in workforce. So the bottom line is we need more people to make Vermont their home. We also know people want to come here, but to compete with other states and keep and attract more workers and families, we need reliable broadband, housing, childcare, jobs, good schools, and healthy, safe communities. That's why these investments in connectivity, along with hundreds of millions we put into housing, economic development, and water and sewer infrastructure, are so important. We're finally giving all corners of Vermont the tools they need to compete for workers and jobs. And again, we wouldn't be in this position to recover stronger without help from everyone here today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Representative Sibilia.
Thank you, Governor. And now we would like to hear from our federal delegation. We are fortunate enough today to be joined with representatives from all of their offices. So I'd like to call up Tom Barry from Senator Leahy's office, Haley Pirro from Senator Sanders' office, and Rebecca Ellis from Congressman Welch's office.
Thanks, Representative Sibilia, and thank you, Governor and Director Hallquist, for the great work you're doing here, and congratulations to, on behalf of Senator Leahy for NEK Broadband, DVFiber, Maple Broadband, CVFiber, for the work you're doing. The other speakers have noted just the absolute necessity of extending broadband throughout our rural areas and throughout Vermont, and Senator Leahy is well aware of it as the only U.S. Senator living on a dirt road with an internet connection to match. And so he personally understands the importance of this work, and it's why, along with Congressman Welch and Senator Sanders, when the opportunities presented themselves to work with the American Rescue Plan Act and the infrastructure bill, he made sure that the resources would be there to finally really make some great progress on this problem. And he's proud to see it being done. He likes to talk about made in Vermont ideas that go national, and see it being done at the community scale with the CUDs in Vermont really pleases the Senator, and he's just so happy that these resources are here to improve broadband throughout the state, and congratulates everybody involved. And he wishes he could be here today. As all of you know, he's recovering from hip surgery and just chomping to get back to Vermont, but wanted to send his best to everybody today. Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you for having me here to say a few words on behalf of Senator Sanders. First, I want to thank the Governor and Director Hallquist and the Legislature for their leadership. And while the Senator and I know the delegation are proud to have played a role in getting this funding to Vermont, I think we really want to thank the CUDs who do the hard work on the ground, many volunteers to do the hard work of broadband deployment here in Vermont. In particular, I think they know the challenges, yet the necessity of serving the last mile, and also the challenge and necessity of affordability, something that's really important to Senator Sanders. So just really want to thank them, congratulate them, and wish them all the best as they do this hard work. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ellis, and I'm here on behalf of Congressman Welch, and I think I'm going to be repeating a lot of the same thank yous. I think to begin with, the Congressman would like to thank his colleagues, Senator Leahy and Senator Sanders, for their help in passing the American Rescue Plan Act in March of 2021. And then he would also like to thank the Governor and the Legislature for coming up with a wise plan for spending that money, including an incredibly big investment in high-speed broadband. For each dollar in the American Rescue Plan Act, about 20 cents, or a little bit more of that, is going to high-speed broadband, and that investment will be necessary for Vermonters to continue to stay on the cutting edge of the economy and to receive all the services that people need these days, heard telemedicine, schools, and jobs all require fast internet service. And finally, the Congressman would definitely want to thank all of the volunteers who have made this possible, all of the community communications union districts, and the many, many volunteer hours that have gone into making today a reality. This really couldn't be possible without the work of all of these volunteers. And this is probably the hardest work, is doing the construction and being on the ground. So thank you so much to everyone who's here today.
Thank you. And now I think we have with us Senator Cummings from, who's the chair of Senate Finance in the Vermont General Assembly. So, yours.
Thank you. I'm Ann Cummings, and I do chair the Committee on Finance, and we were one of the committees that worked on this. And everybody today is celebrating finally we're getting some real money out there. We're going to really start stringing cable. But the other thing I think we should be celebrating today is the fact, you've heard from everybody that talks, there were all kinds of people involved in this, from the federal delegation to the House, to the Senate, to the administration. Commissioner Tierney, who kept a stern eye on us as we worked our way through the nitty-gritty and the details. But in the end, we have success, and success that's going to help the people of Vermont immensely. And to me, one of the things I don't want to lose sight of is the fact that this proves that government and democracy, when it's done right, actually can work and can benefit people. And I think here in Vermont, we should celebrate that. We usually do it right.
Thank you, Senator Cummings. Okay, and now we are going to hear from the most important people, and these are our CUDs. And I'm so excited to introduce I'll introduce each of the chairs of the CUDs that have won awards, and they'll come up and tell you about their award and their project. They've all brought people with them to talk a little bit about what this is going to mean in their district. And I am so excited to introduce, no kidding, my high school physics teacher and long retired superintendent now, Stephen John from DVFiber, and he'll bring up his guests.
Personally, thank you. I'm not that old, really. But I'm not that old, really. But I do have some guests with me here invited, and I'd like first to introduce a member of our board. That is Edie Edwards. She is the representative from Halifax, and you may associate Halifax with Nova Scotia, but in fact, there's a Halifax in southern Vermont, and along with the 24 other member towns in our district. I would like to next introduce a family, or at least half the family, Andrea Burke and her two sons. We have James in blue and Pete in the pink shirt there, okay? And they're more than happy to share their stories with you. I think I'll just give you a little geography lesson about where we are. Most people know where the Northeast Kingdom is, but DVFiber doesn't really mean too much. Our name is taken after the Deerfield Valley, which is in the south of the state and runs into the Connecticut River down at Deerfield, Massachusetts. We span a distance across the south border of the state from Stamford, which is actually in Bennington County, to Brattleboro, Vernon on the east, and to the north we go up to Weston, which is in Windsor County, and then we have another 21 towns in the county of Windham. We are fortunately contiguous, so we have been able to design a high-level design based on the pre-construction money grant to ensure that we have a universal service plan for every single E911 location, occupied location, on the grid in our 24 towns. Those are the details. We received, we're very happy to report, we received 1.9 some million, and that is certainly will carry us through a number of phases that we have planned in our design, working from the highest priority towns being places like Halifax, that is 100% unserved, to eventually towns that are very well served, like Brattleboro. And interestingly, and to the credit of Vermonters, towns that did not have a large number of people unserved joined our CUD early. Brattleboro, Wilmington, Dover. Those towns have cable service. They have service. But in each of those towns, there are people up in the hills, a little bit distant, that just can't get it. And it's not a matter of whether they got the money. It's the digital divide in Vermont is largely based upon topography and geography. So this is the first time that we can do away, say goodbye to the dreams and the wishes and the hopes and get to the construction. And this money helps us do that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hi everybody, I'm Edie Edwards. I'm from the town of Halifax. My husband and I returned to Vermont during COVID, right after the governor said you could quarantine for 14 days and come back. And when we did, my husband and I knew what we were getting into in terms of broadband, because I was on the Halifax Broadband Committee back in 2010 to 2015. And during that time, we did manage to get a somewhat better patchwork of service. We got a little bit more DSL. We got a Wi-Fi cellular tower in the center of town. But it still has been very sketchy. And I am a librarian by training. I work in information science. And I have been able to work remotely from my home in the past, and I was looking forward to doing so again as I returned. At one point, my employer, who was of course new to this work from home stuff as well, asked us to sign an agreement about our service that we would have for broadband as well as other work from home arrangements. And unfortunately, the speed that they wanted was not commercially available at my house. I do have a DSL service, but it was not quite what they wanted. And I did inquire about what would it take to bring fiber, which I had seen coming closer and closer to my home, and they said it would be $30,000. So that's really not feasible for most people in Vermont. And so, working with generous employers and, old, past, and present, I have been able to do much of my work from home to maintain professional connections with others in New England. But more important than that, I think, is that broadband helps us connect to others in our community and in our family. I had good enough service that I could arrange for Halifax happy hours virtually. I had good enough service that I could meet with my family on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And Christmas Day was the day that my dad was tested positive for COVID. I was able to meet with his ICU care team because I had good enough service. And it's really been a beneficial service to continue to have. I served briefly on our select board in 2022. Grateful for the opportunity to be able to serve again remotely where I could feel safe by not being in the physical building that we have, which is fairly small. And I also use the internet for telehealth appointments, including grief counseling. So it's huge to say that all Vermonters should have this capability. It shouldn't be a question as to whether that connection is going to split out at the wrong time. We are so grateful for everybody who's put so much time into this. It is, it's truly not just about cables, it's about the connection. It's a connection to our families, to our friends, to our communities, and for our health. And I am so thrilled to finally see that we're going to get stuff out there and get to my house and my neighbors' houses. Thank you.
Pete James. Now this is only half the family, folks, but she'll tell you the story.
Hi, I'm Andrea Burke. I live in Marlborough. I'm a busy mom of 4. I have 2 kids in high school and grade school and a kindergartner. COVID was a nightmare. Try getting 3 kids that were in school that all had different classrooms. My husband was a teacher, and he was trying to stream his classroom and teach lessons to elementary school kids. So they needed to see his face. His teachers, they thought they weren't there because the cameras had to be off. If anyone turned the camera on, instant lag. We had, I think, 10 megabytes a second down and 1 up, and his principal of the school was so generous, and she's like, we can get you faster internet. I'm like,
Not sure you can actually. We've tried. So we're really excited about this. I work from home, in between all the other millions of things I do as a mom. But I work from home, and I go into work in Connecticut one day a week, and it's barely possible. There's a lot of days that I'm supposed to be doing online research. I work in both, finance. I have kind of a jack of all trades for the company because it's a very small business. So I do finance, I do landscaping, and I do some consulting work. And trying to do even just research on text-only websites, sometimes it just doesn't load from our house because it's old copper wire. So I'm so excited to come into the 21st century. My husband also works from home. He runs a business, a small online resale business, and for him, trying to meet with clients, have Zoom meetings, and just, he has to go to a parking lot and use free public Wi-Fi. And so, he's talking to new clients in his car, dressed nicely, and he's in his car. So it doesn't look very professional for him, and he says it's frankly embarrassing. My daughter used to beg, when everything went online for COVID, it wasn't just classrooms, it was also social life. So there were Discord servers, there were Minecraft realms that kids were meeting on to still talk to their friends. It wasn't on the Foursquare court anymore. And my daughter used to beg for Zaydates, which is a Zoom play date, but her friends couldn't see her because we just didn't have the bandwidth to do photos, and so they missed her. And it was so hard for all of us, and I'm just so excited to be coming into the 21st century. We love Vermont. I'll give you each a second to speak, but both of my boys are interested in things with computers, either software engineering, finance, game design, and I'd love for them to stay in Vermont and take these careers to Vermont, take their families to Vermont, and raise them in some amazing community. And I feel like having fiber broadband makes them able to do that. Do you want to say anything real quick? This is James.
Yeah, hi. I mean, in my experience, a big part of, because Vermont is, while the community is very tight-knit, at times it can be very spread out. Like, most of my friends live probably at least 20 minutes away. So a lot of the times it's not really feasible to meet up with them in person, if they're busy, and it's so you go and you want to play some video games with them at night, and sometimes it just doesn't happen because you log on, you play for 20 minutes, and it doesn't work. And you can't hear them because anytime they speak, it's doing a little thing where it goes on and off. Yeah, so I'm excited for socially to be able to communicate with my peers more, become closer to them by this new technology that we're bringing into Vermont. So I'm super excited about that. Also, I mean, it can be hard to do schoolwork sometimes when you can't load the Google Classroom. So yeah, I'm just super excited because it'll make school easier. It'll make hanging out with my friends easier. It'll make probably when I start looking for a career, it's probably gonna make that a lot easier because I plan on. I think I'm gonna end up doing something computer related, something tech related. So yeah, I'm super excited about all of that, and I am really proud of what these people have done to make sure that this happens.
So yeah, we're a family of gamers. I really like hanging out with my friends over gaming, and sometimes we'll just spend a ton of time going through all the effort to find a date or a time when everybody's available to play one game, and then the internet doesn't work, and then you have to totally restart. And then so I would love to stay in Vermont, and I was worried that I couldn't stay here because most of my career options, game designing, would all really heavily rely on using the internet, uploading, downloading assets, meeting with other game designers, downloading games to study, so I'm really happy that there is going to be good internet, and I'll be able to pursue this career.
Thank you. Stephen, I think you said 1.9 million, but I think the award was 21.
21.9.
Yes, a little difference. Next up, we'd love to introduce Central Vermont Fiber and Jerry Diamantidis, who is the chair.
Thank you, Laura.
I want to start out by just doing a different set of thanks here before I ask my colleagues to come up and join me. I really want to thank the folks at WEC who are allowing us to house our fiber right here, or a small portion of our fiber. We've built a wonderful relationship with WEC, and they're instrumental to our success. And you know, our subscribers are their members, and we recognize that partnership. And it's a really strong relationship we've built. And I want to thank you publicly for that. And I also want to thank the Vermont Community Broadband Board. The oversight and the guidance that we've received is critical to the success that we're having. And I just want to stand here and say thank you for that, because without that, you'd have 9 different CUDs going in 9 different directions, or however many CUDs there are. Sorry, and keeping us moving in the same direction is critical. And the guidance and leadership here, and all the hoops we have to jump through, each one of them is worth jumping through. It's appreciated. But I'm going to ask a couple of my colleagues here at CVFiber. We have Janelle Smith is our executive director. We have David Healy, who is the chair of our planning and development committee and also our GIS guru, actually the state's GIS guru. And Jeremy Hansen is also here. He's the founder of CVFiber. He was the chair before I became the chair. And I'm happy to have Jeremy here. So let me just talk about what we're doing here really quickly, because we're getting a grant of $12.3 million for construction. We have $8 million in materials grant funding, and that is going to allow us to construct 400 miles of fiber, give or take, and that's going to allow us to connect 3,000 underserved or unserved residences, and these are the folks that just don't have a chance of getting high-speed internet without this kind of intervention. Closing the digital divide here is probably the most important work I've ever done in my life. And this beard's really gray. I've been working a while, but it's critically important work. And I want to thank everybody all the way up and down the line, from our volunteers to the folks all the way at the federal government level that are making this possible. We have a lot more to do. The money that we're receiving here is probably going to fund about 18 months, maybe 24 months worth of construction. We'll need more money after that, just to make sure everybody knows that to get to everybody else, because we're getting to about 40% of our underserved with these grant funds that we have secure now. So there are more folks to reach, and we're going to do it. We are definitely going to do it. So, David, do you have something that you'd like to add here?
I don't know. It's been 3.5 years of making this happen.
Okay. 3.5 years of making it happen. So it has. Jeremy, would you like to say something?
Sure. It's actually been longer than 3.5 years, David. So I didn't have any gray in this. So I was on the Berlin Select Board, and I'm also a computer science professor. So I rely on network connections, and so. Also, having been a gamer for 40 years, and nowhere to love to have you, by the way. I'm also the founder of the esports program, by the way. Just putting that out there. Plug. But I was on DSL. I was not able to do the things that I needed to do from home. I would have to drive in to work, which was fine. I didn't live terribly far, but it was awkward, and I had 2 young children. And I was hearing from folks in Berlin who did not have reasonable access. And so I've been talking about this with students. I've been talking about this with people for a long time. And I think it was at the end of 2016, I was having dinner with Jerry and his wife. And Meg was describing the situation she found herself in, because you guys moved there like that year, right?
Yeah, from Providence, Rhode Island.
Right. And Meg was an educator, and she realized, she was relating the story of, she went to meet with her students, and she had these wonderful lesson plans, and she had this wonderful material that she was waiting to share with her students. The students did not have broadband access. Did not have broadband access that was sufficient to use the materials that she had prepared. She had to throw those materials away and start over. And I thought that was a shame. So I kind of felt like that was the inflection point where I thought that this was the time. This was the time where we had to do something. Come town meeting day, 2017, I raised this from the floor. I said, who wants to go in and do something like VCBB did? Create a communications union district. And Governor Scott, you were there, and it was a unanimous yes vote. That doesn't really happen in town meetings. I was on the select board for 7 years. That was one of maybe 2 that I remember that happening. There's always a lot of discussion. And so we got the notice, and working with Jerry, working with David, working with a lot of other folks that came to those early meetings in 2017. We got it on the ballot in 2018, and it passed in a lot of towns unanimously. We started with 12 towns, and now we're up over almost twice that. And people are, as you're hearing, people are excited, and I'm excited, because we can start achieving things like looking at some of our climate goals, right? Less telecommuting, some of the options that we have for demand response for electricity. These are exciting things that with a full fiber network like we're looking to build, we can get there. So that's very exciting. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone here so much for making this happen. Without the public funds, this was not commercially viable, and now it is with public-private partnerships. And the want is there, and it always has been there, and it was going to happen, but with this funding, it can happen faster. And I am so happy to be back in Vermont. I spent a lot of time away, and coming home to a place that can compete in a global economy and give children an opportunity to game and grow their careers and their lives here is so important to us. So thank you very much for making this a possibility.
Okay, great. Next up we are going to hear from Maple Broadband and Ellie DeVillers, who is the vice chair.
Thank goodness for the wind.
Yeah, it's very hot out here.
So my round of thanks as well. I'd like to start with the governor and the legislature, thanking you for the leadership and the legislative framework that has enabled all of this. Certainly without that, we wouldn't be here today. I'd also like to thank the Vermont Community Broadband Board, as well as the staff of the Vermont Community Broadband Board, which has provided our CUD with tremendous leadership and guidance over the past months. I'd like to thank our partners at Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom, who have been steadfast partners, and they have really gone above and beyond. And then also the Addison County Regional Planning Commission, which has been there since the very beginning, since before the formation of Maple Broadband. And finally, of course, I'd like to thank all of the volunteers that we've had, many volunteer hours on our executive committee and our governing board. So Maple Broadband represents Addison County, 20 towns in Addison County. So this grant is for $8.69 million, which is going to enable us to build 180 miles over the next year or so. And that is going to bring broadband service to 1,789 addresses, of which 1,135 are currently underserved. So again, just to echo what's already been said, it is tremendously exciting to bring high-speed broadband to those who have had none for so long. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jean Audette, who's a resident of Orwell, who's going to be telling her story.
Okay, Orwell is a very small town in southwestern Addison, and I'm a lister in Orwell, so I'm going to get a little bit different viewpoint than maybe you've had before. When the pandemic hit, we had to work at home, and our software that the listers have required high-speed internet. Now, maybe some of you don't really understand what a lister is. All of a sudden, when I put this out, I found out a lot of people don't. Our responsibilities are to set the value of property within our town. There are 3 listers in Orwell. They are elected at town meeting, and we set the values and update properties with the software that we have. We have to take new pictures, and we do this, and then that all goes on the grand list, which, with the select board's budget, sets the tax rate, which sets the income of the town. So, whether you believe it or not, listers are important. And our job, my job, got really hindered. You've heard about it, you know about it. I just couldn't upload photos. And I had been able to do it a little bit at the town clerk's office, but I couldn't even do it there because so many people had come on our DSL that you got what I call the circle of death, or it was completely dropped. You just, you couldn't use it. So then let's take a little personal note on my part. Was at the time of the pandemic, I'm on the board of directors of the Vermont Horse Council. And it's an organization, I have a horse, we do a lot in the state. I had to meet with state agencies to think about trails and this and that. Could not do it. They couldn't understand me. There were too many people on the Zoom, and my high-speed internet just would not do it. So, and then take another little personal level. I have a daughter that lives out just south of Seattle, Washington. Her job is she can work from home. Her significant other's job can work at home. They would love to come and visit for maybe a month. They can't because we don't have that high-speed internet. So, without a doubt, this is something that I was wishing for back in 2016 or whatever. And for all the bad things about COVID, I think it came to our light that we really need this, and I'm so glad that it's now going this direction. And I feel very strongly about it being a co-op that is doing it, because we just aren't seeing the private companies doing it. And I believe that in the big world, I think it's like rural electrification that was you pointed out. And why can't we have our internet be that? It's something every household needs. It isn't a luxury, it is a need. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And then our final CUD is NEK Broadband. This is their second award. They are really moving. We're going to ask Krista Shute, the director of NEK Broadband, to come up. And then we will take questions. We'll have the governor and members of the federal delegation, Christine, hang out. So, Krista.
Thanks, Laura. I really want to profoundly reiterate the gratitude that has been expressed by the CUDs that came before me. It really is a collective effort to build this kind of public infrastructure. This is a $5 million grant for NEK Broadband, and it expands on the $16 million construction grant that we were previously awarded. The key about this grant for us is that it is the town ARPA funds that the VCBB provided matching funds for. So we had 4 towns, we now have 5, but we had 4 towns at the time of this grant amendment that had pledged ARPA funds. And so our program is about building the backbone first and getting the infrastructure throughout the kingdom. These ARPA funds enable those towns to build more fiber in their town faster as we're building the backbone. And there's a really neat thing that happened. So Walden and Peacham were the first towns to commit the funds. When Peacham committed the funds, both of those towns were on the backbone, and the spurs will come off of that backbone. But when Peacham committed the funds, they committed it to a spur that reached down to Groton. Now Groton didn't have any backbone, so it didn't have an opportunity to ask for additional spurs to be built at the same time. And when Groton had that opportunity, it took it and also invested ARPA funds to accelerate. Because Groton took that opportunity, Reigate, who also doesn't have any backbone in their town, was able to participate. And they also invested a good chunk, actually, of their ARPA funds. And so it really, those towns all worked together in helping each other's select boards understand what was going on and what the importance was and why it was important to their town and to the CUD as a whole. So overall, this $5 million will bring service to another 634 premises that don't have broadband, and 877 overall. Together with our other construction, we're now up to 2,113 premises without broadband and nearly 2,978 premises overall. I want to share a story from our area that came, two short stories. One is that part of the piece in Reigate, I received an actual handwritten letter. Like, I don't know the last time I received a handwritten letter. And it was from a woman in Reigate that could not use her computer at home. That's why she wrote the letter, and asked for us to correspond with her by mail with information on what was happening. And really, you know, pleaded her case for why it was so important. And we sent that letter with her permission to the Reigate Select Board, and I think, you know, that helped influence a lot of people, both in Groton and in Reigate. And we, in Groton, there was an individual named Leo Armiston, and and I'm going to read what he wrote to the Groton board member for the NEK Broadband. Having reliable, high-speed internet would be life-changing for my family and I, who struggle because of the lack of an adequate internet connection. I've been a volunteer firefighter and EMR for the past 20 years, 2.5 in the town of Groton where I reside. I'm also on the FAST squad, carrying a jump bag with me at all times. I'm certified by the state to administer basic life-saving measures and often respond to emergency calls arriving at the scene before the ambulance. And I recently took online coursework to obtain my EMR, the Emergency Medical Responder, certification in order to be able to continue to serve the community where I live and volunteer. But it was a struggle because the internet would cut out constantly. While I'd love to be able to go back to school, and I've often considered it, I'm reluctant because I doubt my connectivity will allow me adequate access to my learning. When my children started remote learning due to the pandemic, it became impossible for us to all be online at the same time. So I drive into town daily, and we'd sit in my car in the library or fire department parking lots so that my children could attend school. This wasn't an ideal approach. This was not an ideal learning situation for my kids, and we all struggled with the experience. As my children approach high school, I'm concerned they won't have enough bandwidth to even do their homework if they're required to watch or stream it. Sorry, not my phone. I'm concerned they won't have enough bandwidth to even do their homework if they're required to watch or stream it. So I'm very grateful for the construction funds. We are in construction. We have just completed another 5 miles last week up in Concord, and we will be constructing in Waterford next week, and we're just gonna keep working it as soon as make-ready's done and parts come in. So thank you very much. Thank you to the governor, the legislature, the VCB board, and our board, who's put in endless hours. Over 56 towns, 51 members, so it's a lot of board members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and before we take questions, I just want to make another plug for Washington Electric Co-op, because not only have they provided warehousing space, they've been on this from day one in terms of how this is going to help their members. You know, so they're thinking, very forward thinking in terms of, you know, the smart grid and getting their members connected. So I thank you, WEC, for all your support for this thing. And at this point, I'll take broadband questions. Any other questions you've got to direct to the governor?
Christine, do you have an update on a mission accomplished goal date?
Yeah, yes, we're still targeting 5 years. You know, we predicted that we would be 1,500 miles the first year. It would take 1,900 miles a year, so our target is 2,100 next year. We're at 1,400 miles so far in this first year. Actually, the fiscal year runs till June 30th of next year, so I think we're well ahead of schedule. So, but thanks to the work that these folks did.
2026?
2026, yeah, 5 years from.
And in the past, you've spoken about some of the costs from materials. Where do we stand right now? Has it become more affordable over the past couple of months?
Well, I think if you look what's happening with broadband material, it's kind of like what you're seeing with the consumer price index times 2. You know, I think it's starting to settle and starting to level off, just like you're seeing other things start to level off. We're glad of that. We did, in our budget plan, we did plan for contingency. So we're kind of at our contingency now. We don't want to go too much higher at this point, but we did plan, you know, a year and a half ago when we talked about the $550 million that had contingency built into it.
I guess I think Jerry mentioned a percentage of unserved homes that this is targeting, but do we know a number of unserved homes once this is done that still need the broadband?
Yeah, I'd have to do the numbers in my head, but we have approximately 64,000 unserved homes at this point. You know, I'm not sure what the running total is right now, but you know, one of the things that's a little confusing in the beginning is a lot of this money is being spent to build the backbone infrastructure. So it's not really a straight line math function. So, you know, I think the better measure is the miles being built, which we're on track for. But as far as addresses go, you know, there's going to be less addresses built up front because we're building backbones. Other questions? Thank you again, Governor.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for your great leadership on this.
Okay.